Tonight, we're turning our attention toward one of the quietest misunderstandings in modern psychology. What does it actually mean to carry a nervous system built for depth in a world that moves too fast? Science tells a different story than the one most sensitive people have been told. And that story begins right here, with you, exactly as you are. Welcome to Psychology for Sleep. Wherever you are right now, perhaps with the lights already dimmed, your body slowly unclenching from the day, allow yourself this particular kind of stillness. We'll move through 100 relaxing facts about highly sensitive people, from the neuroscience of a nervous system built for depth, to the quiet dignity of feeling everything, to the tender science of why rest matters most for minds like yours. This gentle space exists for the ones who feel too much and rest too little. Sharing this video quietly with another sensitive soul creates a pathway for them to find what you found tonight. Every sensitive soul who finds this space finds something the world rarely offers them. The science that says they were never too much. Let yourself settle completely now. Feel the weight of the day gently releasing from your shoulders, your jaw, your hands. There is nothing left to process tonight. Allow your mind to become as quiet as a room after the last guest has gone. Still, unheld, and finally, only yours. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're resting where the quietest rooms hold the most feeling. Let your mind soften into its own depth. And now we begin. The trait we now call high sensitivity was first identified and named by psychologist Elaine Aron in the early 1990s. She called it sensory processing sensitivity. And what began as a clinical observation quietly became one of the most studied personality traits in modern psychology. Aron noticed that a consistent group of her research participants seemed to process information more deeply than others, pausing before acting, noticing subtleties, feeling moved by art and music and the emotions of people around them. She estimated that this trait appears in roughly 15 to 20% of the human population. That means, if you've always felt that you experience life more intensely than those around you, you are not alone, and you never were. You are part of something that has always existed. High sensitivity is not a disorder, a diagnosis, or a weakness. Researchers are careful to classify it as a normal trait, a variation in how the nervous system is built, not a malfunction of it. Studies using large population samples have consistently confirmed that sensory processing sensitivity exists on a spectrum, with most people falling somewhere in the middle and a significant portion at either end. Highly sensitive people simply sit further along that spectrum toward depth, nuance, and emotional resonance. The scientific literature describes this as a biological difference, not a psychological problem. Understanding this distinction, truly letting it settle, may be one of the most restful things a sensitive person can do for themselves. The nervous systems of highly sensitive people process sensory information more thoroughly than average. Brain imaging research has shown that when HSPs view photographs of people expressing emotion, their brains show significantly more activation in areas associated with awareness, empathy, and action planning. The processing happens in layers, where others might register an expression and move on. The HS P nervous system lingers, integrates, considers. This is not overthinking. This is a system doing exactly what it was designed to do, processing more completely, more carefully, and more deeply than most. It is the biological signature of a mind that takes the world seriously. High sensitivity appears in over 100 species of animals, from fruit flies to fish to primates. This remarkable fact, documented across decades of comparative biology, suggests that the trait did not arise by accident. It has persisted through millions of years of natural selection because it offers genuine survival advantages. In environments where careful observation and cautious decision-making matter, the sensitive individual within a social group often serves a protective function. They notice what others miss. They register change before it becomes threat. Researchers describe sensitivity as an adaptive strategy, one of at least two viable approaches an organism can take toward navigating an uncertain world. Your nervous system is ancient. It has always had a reason to exist. Researchers have explored genetic factors associated with high sensitivity, and the picture that emerges is genuinely complex. Early studies pointed to variants in genes related to serotonin and dopamine regulation as possible contributors. More recent research has offered a more nuanced view. The effect of any single gene appears to depend heavily on environment, early experience, and many other genetic factors working together. Scientists now describe this through what they call differential susceptibility. The biological features that make someone more responsive to difficulty also make them more responsive to care, to beauty, and to the conditions that allow flourishing. Sensitivity is not written into one gene. It is woven through an entire system, and that system responds to how it is treated. The brains of highly sensitive people show heightened activity in the insula, a region associated with interoception, which is the brain's awareness of the body's internal states. This means HSPs tend to be more aware of their own heartbeat, their breathing, and the internal signals that accompany emotion. Interoceptive awareness is now understood by neuroscientists to be deeply connected to empathy, decision-making, and emotional intelligence. The insula is one of the brain's most complex regions, integrating signals from across the body and mind. For highly sensitive people, this region is simply more active, more engaged, more awake to the interior world. What feels like being overwhelmed is often just a very alert, internal compass doing its job. High sensitivity is equally distributed across genders. Research across multiple countries and cultures consistently finds that approximately the same proportion of men and women carry the trait. The cultural assumption that sensitivity is a feminine quality is not supported by the data. What does differ is how the trait is expressed and socially permitted across different cultural contexts. In societies where emotional expression is more accepted, sensitive individuals, regardless of gender, tend to report higher well-being and better sleep. This tells us something worth sitting with. It is not the sensitivity itself that causes suffering. It is the mismatch between how a person is wired and what the world around them asks of them. The trait is neutral. The environment shapes the experience. Highly sensitive people tend to process experiences more deeply in a specific cognitive way that researchers call elaborate processing. This means that after an experience, a conversation, a piece of music, a difficult interaction, the HSP nervous system continues working with that experience long after others have moved on. Information is connected to memories. Emotions are examined from multiple angles. Meaning is constructed carefully. This is why HSPs are often described as reflective, thoughtful, or hard to read in the moment. It is also why they can be so extraordinarily good at understanding complex situations, finding patterns others miss, and offering insight that feels unexpectedly precise. The mind that takes longer to finish is often the one that finishes most thoroughly. One of the 4 core features of high sensitivity, identified by Aron and her colleagues, is what she called being easily overstimulated. This is not a character flaw or a form of anxiety. It is the predictable consequence of a system that processes more than average. When input exceeds the system's comfortable processing capacity, the HSP experiences what researchers call overstimulation, a state of neural overload that often manifests as exhaustion, irritability, or a powerful need for solitude and quiet. Understanding this biological reality reframes the experience entirely. The need to withdraw from a party, to decline an invitation, to sit quietly in a dark room. These are not antisocial choices. They are acts of self-regulation. The nervous system asking for what it needs. So yes, the science is already revealing what many sensitive people have always quietly suspected. They are not too much. They are differently calibrated. Research from the past decade has increasingly moved away from pathologizing sensitivity and toward understanding it as a biologically grounded trait with its own costs and its own gifts. The highly sensitive person who feels too deeply in a world that moves too fast is not broken. They are a particular kind of instrument, one that registers frequencies others cannot hear. And, like any instrument, the quality of the music it makes depends enormously on the conditions in which it is played. Tonight, consider this a favorable condition. Highly sensitive people tend to have richer and more complex inner lives than average. According to self-report studies and psychological assessments, they report more vivid daydreams, more detailed mental imagery, and a stronger tendency to reflect on personal experiences and their meaning. This internal richness is one of the trait's most consistent features and one of its most quietly wonderful ones. The HSP often lives in 2 places at once: the external world and an interior landscape that is just as real, just as populated, just as vivid. This is why so many artists, writers, musicians, and healers turn out to be highly sensitive people. The depth they carry inside becomes the work they make for others. Empathy in highly sensitive people operates through specific neural mechanisms that researchers have been studying in increasing detail. Mirror neuron activity, the brain system for simulating the experiences of others, appears more pronounced in HSPs. When a highly sensitive person watches someone else experience pain, their own pain processing regions activate more strongly than in the average observer. This is not metaphorical. The HSP brain literally resonates with the emotional states of others at a measurable neural level. This is why being around distressed people can be physically exhausting for highly sensitive individuals. They are not imagining the weight of others' emotions. They are, in a precise, biological sense, experiencing a version of them. Many highly sensitive people report being more reactive to caffeine than those around them, noticing anxiety or disrupted sleep at moderate doses, while controlled studies specifically comparing caffeine response across sensitivity levels are still limited. This pattern is consistent with what researchers understand about heightened autonomic reactivity in HSPs. The system that notices more responds more, including to stimulants in the environment. Interestingly, HSPs also tend to be more responsive to positive interventions, including sleep hygiene practices, relaxation technique, and environments designed for rest. The system that is easily overwhelmed is also the one most deeply soothed. Tonight is a demonstration of exactly that. The relationship between high sensitivity and sleep is one of the most actively studied areas in current HSP research. Highly sensitive people report higher rates of sleep difficulties than the general population. But the nature of those difficulties is specific. The most common pattern is not difficulty falling asleep per se, but difficulty calming the processing system enough to allow sleep to begin. The mind that processes deeply during the day continues processing deeply at night. Thoughts do not stop. Emotions from the day continue to be examined. This is the sensitive person's particular bedtime challenge. Not a dysfunction of the sleep system, but an overflow of the processing system into the hours meant for rest. One of the most helpful reframes for highly sensitive people who struggle with sleep is understanding that the goal is not to stop the mind from processing. It is to give the mind something gentle to process. Research on a technique called cognitive shuffling, developed by researchers in Canada, suggests that giving the brain a soft, random sequence of unrelated images can interrupt the focused processing loop and allow sleep to begin more naturally. This is, in a sense, the scientific basis for what you are doing right now. You are giving your processing mind something calm to work with, and letting the rest happen on its own. Highly sensitive people show a stronger physiological response to beauty than average. Studies using measures of heart rate variability, skin conductance, and self-report have found that HSPs experience aesthetic emotions, the chills produced by music, the catch in the throat at a sunset, the quiet awe in front of a painting, more frequently and more intensely than non-HSPs. This phenomenon, sometimes called aesthetic chills or frisson, is associated with dopamine release in the brain's reward pathways. For the highly sensitive person, beauty is not a preference. It is a physiological event. The world is more saturated with it, more capable of producing it, and more able to reach the sensitive person through it. The trait of high sensitivity appears to be substantially heritable, according to twin studies, meaning that a meaningful portion of the variation in sensitivity levels between people can be attributed to genetic factors, with the remainder shaped by environment and experience. This is consistent with findings across many personality traits and suggests that while you may have been born with a particular sensitivity baseline, your experiences, your environment, and your relationships have also shaped how that sensitivity expresses itself. The sensitive child raised in a safe, attuned environment often develops into an adult whose sensitivity is primarily a source of richness. The same child raised in a chaotic or critical environment may experience the same nervous system as a burden. The difference is almost entirely context. Highly sensitive people tend to be conscientious and thorough in their work. Multiple large-scale personality studies have found a consistent correlation between sensory processing sensitivity and the trait of conscientiousness. The tendency to be careful, organized, and thorough in completing tasks. This makes intuitive sense. A system that processes details deeply is naturally inclined to notice when something is incomplete, incorrect, or could be done more carefully. HSPs often hold themselves and their work to high standards, not because they are perfectionists in a distressed sense, but because their processing system genuinely registers nuance and quality at a level that makes carelessness feel uncomfortable. This, too, is not a flaw. It is precision. In biological form, research published in recent years has explored the connection between high sensitivity and what psychologists call post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon in which people experience meaningful, positive change following adversity. Studies have found that highly sensitive people, when supported well through difficult experiences, show higher rates of post-traumatic growth than less sensitive individuals. The same depth of processing that makes hardship more intense also makes the integration of that hardship richer. Highly sensitive people tend to extract more meaning from difficulty, connect it more fully to their sense of identity and values, and emerge from it with a more complex and compassionate understanding of themselves and others. The wound, in the right conditions, becomes the opening. The nervous system of a highly sensitive person responds differently to neutral stimuli, as well as emotionally charged ones. Brain imaging studies have found that when HSPs view images that are simply unfamiliar, not frightening or beautiful, just new, they show greater neural activity than average in regions associated with attention and decision-making. Even novelty, even the merely unknown, is processed more thoroughly. This is why HSPs often take longer to adjust to new environments, new relationships, or new routines. It is not resistance or fear. It is the processing system doing due diligence, making sure the new thing is understood before it is accepted. Given time and space, HSPs typically adjust beautifully. They simply need more of both. Highly sensitive people report higher levels of gratitude than the general population in multiple cross-cultural studies. This is not simply because they are more emotionally expressive. It appears to reflect a genuine difference in attentional processing. The HSP nervous system notices more texture, more connection, more small moments of goodness that a less sensitive observer might pass over without registering. The highly sensitive person who pauses at a certain quality of light or feels unexpectedly moved by a stranger's kindness is not being sentimental. They are experiencing the natural output of a system wired for noticing and noticing. It turns out, is very close to gratitude. Relationships tend to matter more to highly sensitive people and to affect them more than to the general population. Research consistently finds that HSPs report greater satisfaction in relationships characterized by emotional depth, honesty, and mutual understanding, and greater distress in relationships marked by conflict, superficiality, or emotional unavailability. This is the mirror image of the general sensitivity pattern. The same system that is more affected by negative relational experiences is also more nourished by positive ones. For the highly sensitive person, a single, deeply attuned relationship can be genuinely sustaining in a way that a large social network of more casual connections cannot replicate. Quality is not a preference. For the HSP nervous system, it is a nutritional requirement. The startle response, the body's automatic reaction to sudden noise or movement, is measurably stronger in highly sensitive people. Studies measuring the blink reflex and physiological arousal following unexpected stimuli have found that HSPs show larger and longer-lasting responses than the average population. This is a direct expression of the underlying neural architecture. A system calibrated toward sensitivity registers sudden changes in the environment more intensely. This is also why quiet environments are not merely preferable for HSPs. They are genuinely restorative. In a quiet room, the startle system has nothing to respond to. The nervous system can finally be what it is without being constantly called to attention. Silence, for the highly sensitive person, is not empty. It is full of rest. Creativity in highly sensitive people has been the subject of increasing scientific attention in recent years. Studies examining the relationship between sensory processing sensitivity and creative thinking have found consistent associations between the trait and what researchers call divergent thinking, the ability to generate many different ideas, make unexpected connections, and approach problems from unconventional angles. The neural architecture that processes information deeply and widely, that registers emotional nuance and aesthetic detail, that reflects on experience rather than moving past it. This is also the architecture of creative thought, the HSP's inner world. Rich and detailed as it tends to be, provides a library that creative work can draw from endlessly. The sensitivity is not incidental to the creativity. It is the source of it. This is one of the most quietly beautiful things the research has confirmed. These 25 facts have been circling a single truth that researchers are now saying plainly. High sensitivity is not a problem to be solved. It is a design to be understood. The trait has persisted across species and across human history because it serves a genuine function: noticing, processing, connecting, creating, and caring at a depth that the world needs. Even when the world does not always know how to accommodate it, you have been carrying something that is worth carrying. And tonight, the only thing it needs to do is rest. Let's pause here and notice your body. Right now, every cell in you has been doing something that sensitive nervous systems are particularly practiced at. Taking in, processing, integrating. As you breathe out slowly, appreciate that this can stop now. Your mind has done its work today. Your body has carried it beautifully. Notice the weight of your limbs, the rise and fall of your chest, the small sounds of the room. You are a complete ecosystem. And tonight, every part of it is allowed to be quiet. Now we continue. The autonomic nervous system of highly sensitive people tends to spend more time in a state of activation than average, meaning the body's arousal systems are more readily engaged and take longer to return to baseline after stimulation. This is not pathological anxiety. It is a reflection of the underlying sensitivity architecture. The system is simply slower to conclude that a situation has fully resolved and continues processing, and therefore continues in a mild state of readiness, longer than a less sensitive nervous system would. Understanding this helps explain why wind-down routines matter so much for HSPs. The nervous system needs longer to complete its arc from activation to rest, but it does complete it. Given time, it always does. Sleep researchers have found that highly sensitive people tend to dream more vividly and with more emotional complexity than the general population. The REM sleep stage, during which most dreaming occurs, is a period of intense neural activity during which the brain processes emotional memories and consolidates learning for a nervous system that has processed more throughout the day. REM sleep appears to carry a heavier load and produces correspondingly richer dream content. Many HSPs report dreams that feel like entire narratives, complete with characters, émotionnel arc, and sensory detail. This is not a disruption of sleep. It is the sensitive brain doing what it does best, even in rest, making meaning from experience. Some early research suggests that highly sensitive people may experience sleep architecture differently, with variations in how much time is spent in light sleep, deep sleep, and dreaming sleep. These findings are still being explored, and scientists are careful not to draw firm conclusions yet. What is clear is that for HSPs, the quality of sleep conditions matters more than for most. The environment shapes what the sensitive nervous system can access during the night. A room that is too warm, too bright, or too loud does not simply reduce comfort. It actively competes with the processing system's ability to settle. Tonight, let the conditions speak for themselves. Highly sensitive people tend to be more responsive to the sleep environment than average. Temperature, light levels, sound, the texture of bedding, the quality of air in the room, all of these register more strongly in the HSP nervous system and have a more pronounced effect on sleep onset and sleep quality. Research on environmental sleep hygiene consistently finds that optimizing these factors benefits all sleepers, but the effect size appears larger for highly sensitive individuals. This is good news. It means that small investments in creating a truly restful sleep environment yield disproportionately large returns for the HSP. The nervous system that is most easily disrupted is also the one most deeply benefited by conditions of genuine care. The relationship between high sensitivity and emotion regulation is nuanced and often misunderstood. Highly sensitive people are not less able to regulate their emotions. In fact, research finds that many HSPs develop sophisticated and effective regulation strategies over time. What differs is that the emotional input requiring regulation is greater to begin with. The HSP is not starting from neutral when faced with an emotionally charged situation. They are starting from a more activated baseline. Effective regulation strategies for HSPs tend to involve creating distance from overstimulating situations before the point of overwhelm, rather than attempting to manage emotions after they have already peaked. Prevention, for the sensitive nervous system, is far more effective than recovery. Mindfulness-based practices have shown particular effectiveness for highly sensitive people in multiple clinical studies. The gentle, non-judgmental awareness that mindfulness cultivates, observing experience without amplifying it, appears to be especially well suited to the HSP's processing style. Research, published in recent years, has found that regular mindfulness practice is associated with reduced emotional reactivity, better sleep quality, and greater life satisfaction, specifically in highly sensitive individuals. The practice works, in part, by teaching the sensitive nervous system to observe its own output without responding to it with additional layers of processing, a kind of meta-awareness that gently interrupts the processing loop. You don't have to stop feeling, you just have to watch the feeling without adding to it. Nature exposure has a measurably stronger restorative effect on highly sensitive people than on the general population. According to research, examining attention, restoration, and stress reduction, studies using both physiological measures and self-report have found that time in natural environments, forests, parks, open water, even green urban spaces, reduces cortisol levels, lowers heart rate, and improves mood more substantially in HSPs than in less sensitive individuals. This is consistent with what many HSPs report intuitively, that nature feels like medicine. The sensory environment of a forest or an open landscape, rich in detail but low in threat, complex but not chaotic, appears to be precisely calibrated for the kind of deep, safe processing the HSP nervous system finds most restorative. Highly sensitive people often end the day carrying emotions that did not originate with them. Because the HSP nervous system registers the emotional states of others so thoroughly, reading tone, micro-expression, and atmosphere with unusual precision, a day spent among people who are stressed, grieving, or conflicted can leave the sensitive person genuinely depleted, even if nothing difficult happened directly to them. This is not weakness. It is the predictable consequence of a system that has been working all day, absorbing what others barely noticed they were broadcasting. One of the most restorative acts for a highly sensitive person is the deliberate recognition of what belongs to others, and the quiet permission to set it down before sleep. Research on what psychologists call thin slicing, the ability to make accurate judgments from very brief exposures to information, has found that highly sensitive people tend to perform particularly well on these tasks. In studies where participants are shown a few seconds of a video clip or read a brief excerpt and asked to make judgments about the people or situations depicted, HSPs consistently show greater accuracy than the general population. This is not intuition in any mystical sense. It is the predictable output of a processing system that registers and integrates more information more quickly at a level below conscious awareness. The HSP, who says something felt off about that situation, is usually reporting data. They just collected it in a way that didn't feel like collecting. The digestive system of highly sensitive people appears to be more reactive than average, reflecting the broader principle that sensitivity operates across all of the body's regulatory systems, not just the emotional or cognitive ones. Many HSPs report greater sensitivity to food, stronger gut reactions to stress, and a more pronounced gut-brain connection than the general population. This is consistent with what neurogastroenterologists describe as a highly active enteric nervous system, the neural network embedded in the digestive tract, sometimes called the second brain. For the HSP, even the gut is listening more carefully, and like the central nervous system, it tends to respond more deeply to both distress and care. Highly sensitive people tend to have stronger immune system responses to psychological stressors. Research examining the relationship between sensory processing sensitivity and immune markers has found that HSPs show larger inflammatory responses to stress, correspondingly, larger anti-inflammatory responses to positive social support and restful conditions. This bidirectional sensitivity, more affected by the negative, but also more deeply benefited by the positive, is one of the most consistent patterns in HSP research. It means that for the highly sensitive person, taking care of themselves is not optional or indulgent. It is, in a precise biological sense, a health intervention. A night of genuine rest is medicine, and you are giving it to yourself right now. The experience of what researchers call sensory gating, the brain's ability to filter out repetitive or irrelevant sensory information, appears to operate differently in highly sensitive people. In the average brain, repeated stimuli are progressively dampened. The sound of traffic fades from awareness. The feeling of clothing against skin disappears from consciousness. In highly sensitive people, this filtering process is less aggressive, meaning more sensory information continues to reach conscious awareness. This is why a ticking clock or a distant conversation can hold the HSP's attention in a way that others find puzzling. The filter is wider. More gets through. This is not a malfunction of attention. It is the nature of a system that was built to miss less. Highly sensitive people tend to have a stronger response to both positive and negative feedback than the general population. Studies using neuroimaging have found that the brain regions associated with self-evaluation, including the medial prefrontal cortex and anterior cingulate, show greater activation in HSPs when they receive evaluative information about their performance or behavior. This means that praise lands more deeply for the HSP, but so does criticism. The same neural architecture that makes encouragement genuinely nourishing also makes harsh judgment genuinely wounding. This is not fragility, it is reciprocity, a system that is fully open in both directions. The kindest thing you can do with this information tonight is apply it to yourself. Be as careful with your own inner voice as you would be with someone you love. Research has found that highly sensitive people are more likely to engage in what psychologists call savoring, the deliberate attention to and appreciation of positive experiences as they are happening. Savoring is associated with greater subjective well-being, more positive emotion, and better resilience in the face of difficulty. For the HSP, this capacity is not effortful. It arises naturally from a system already inclined toward depth and attention. The ability to be fully present in a beautiful moment, to let it register completely rather than passing over it, is one of the genuine privileges of sensitive perception. You have been doing this your whole life, perhaps without knowing its name. And so, halfway through the evidence, a picture is forming, not of a fragile or disordered nervous system, but of a finely tuned one, a system that processes deeply, feels fully, registers subtlety, empathizes readily, and responds strongly to both beauty and difficulty. A system that needs more than average to be well, more quiet, more rest, more care, more time, and gives back, in exchange, more than average in creativity, insight, compassion, and depth. This is the evidence. This is what the research says. And tonight, you are giving your particular nervous system exactly what it needs. Take a slow breath. Notice how the day feels further away now, as if the world outside has moved a little farther from where you are. We are moving through this together. You and I, and every sensitive soul, listening in the quiet. There is no hurry. There never was. Let's continue. The connection between high sensitivity and sleep disruption is not inevitable. It is conditional. Research consistently finds that when highly sensitive people have access to appropriate sleep conditions, adequate downtime during the day, and effective strategies for processing the day's experiences before bed, their sleep quality is not significantly worse than that of less sensitive individuals. The disruption arises not from the sensitivity itself, but from the mismatch between what the HSP nervous system needs and what modern life typically provides. When that mismatch is reduced, even partially, even just for tonight, the nervous system responds. It knows how to rest. It has always known. Highly sensitive children who are raised in supportive, emotionally attuned environments show notably better outcomes across multiple domains: social, academic, psychological, and physical, than less sensitive children raised in the same environments. This finding, replicated across longitudinal studies in multiple countries, is one of the most compelling pieces of evidence for the differential susceptibility model. The HSP child does not simply survive a good environment, they flourish in it more than others. This pattern continues into adulthood. Highly sensitive adults who have found environments, relationships, and routines that accommodate their nature tend to report high levels of life satisfaction, meaningful connection, and a sense of purpose that is rooted in their sensitivity rather than despite it. The practice of journaling before sleep has been studied specifically in relation to high sensitivity, and the results are encouraging. For HSPs, whose processing systems tend to continue working after the day ends, externalizing thoughts and feelings onto paper before sleep appears to reduce the cognitive arousal that delays sleep onset. The brain, having been given a place to put its unfinished processing, is more willing to let go of it. Recent research suggests that even 5 minutes of expressive writing, not structured, not analytical, simply whatever is on the mind, can reduce pre-sleep rumination and improve sleep onset time in individuals with high emotional reactivity. The page becomes a container, the mind becomes lighter. Highly sensitive people tend to be more affected by sleep deprivation than the general population. Studies examining cognitive performance and emotional regulation following disrupted or shortened sleep have found that HSPs show greater impairment, greater emotional reactivity, and greater difficulty recovering their baseline state than less sensitive individuals. This is not weakness. It is the consequence of running a more complex and energy-intensive processing system. A highly calibrated instrument requires more careful maintenance. The sensitive person who prioritizes sleep is not being indulgent. They are performing essential maintenance on a system that, when well rested, is capable of extraordinary things. What you are doing tonight, allowing yourself true rest, is one of the most generative things your nervous system can do. Social interactions tend to require more recovery time for highly sensitive people than for others. Research on introversion and sensitivity has found that HSPs, regardless of whether they identify as introverted or extroverted, typically need more time alone after social engagement in order to process the experience and return to a regulated baseline. This need for what many HSPs describe as alone time or downtime is not antisocial. It is a recovery mechanism. The nervous system that spent the day taking in more from its social environment than average needs more time to complete the processing of that input. Solitude, for the HSP, is not loneliness. It is the neurological equivalent of a full breath after a long exhale. The relationship between high sensitivity and physical pain perception has been studied in multiple clinical contexts. HSPs consistently report lower pain thresholds and greater sensitivity to physical discomfort than the general population, a finding that is consistent with the broader picture of a nervous system calibrated towards sensitivity across all incoming channels. Interestingly, HSPs also show greater responsiveness to pain-reducing interventions, including relaxation techniques and social support. The system that feels more also responds more to care. This bidirectionality is one of the most consistent findings in sensitivity research, and one of the most quietly hopeful. Being deeply affected is not the same as being defenseless. It means the positive reaches you just as fully as the difficult. Highly sensitive people tend to have a stronger response to music than average. Studies measuring physiological responses to music, including heart rate changes, skin conductance, and the subjective experience of aesthetic chills, find that HSPs are significantly more likely to experience these responses and to experience them more intensely. Music, for the highly sensitive person, is not background. It is a direct channel to the emotional processing system, one that can shift mood, reduce cortisol, induce relaxation, and alter the quality of experience within minutes. The sleep researchers who have studied music as a sleep aid have found it particularly effective for individuals with high emotional sensitivity. The gentle music beneath these words is not decoration. It is medicine. There is a particular quality of experience that highly sensitive people describe and that researchers are beginning to formally study: a state of deep absorption, of being completely present in an experience to the degree that time seems to change and the outside world recedes. Psychologists call this absorption, and it correlates strongly with sensory processing sensitivity. HSPs are among the most easily and deeply absorbed individuals in the population, which means they can enter states of profound relaxation and restoration when the conditions are right. What you may be feeling right now, that soft blurring of the boundary between listening and drifting, is this: your nervous system entering one of its most natural and restorative states. Let it. Research on the relationship between high sensitivity and meaning-making, the human process of constructing a sense of purpose and significance from experience, has found that HSPs engage in this process more actively and more thoroughly than average. Highly sensitive people are more likely to describe their lives in terms of themes, to connect present experiences to past ones, to feel that their suffering has taught them something, and to feel that their joys are part of something larger. This meaning-making capacity is one of the most protective factors against depression and anxiety in the general population, and it appears to be naturally more developed in HSPs. You have been making meaning your whole life. It is one of the things your nervous system was built to do. Halfway through, and the picture is clear enough now to say simply, if you have always felt that you experience the world differently, more intensely, more completely, more painfully, and more beautifully, the science agrees with you. You do. And the same science that confirms the difficulty of that also confirms that your nervous system, in the right conditions, is capable of depths of rest and restoration that others may never quite reach. Tonight is one of those conditions. You have already traveled a long way here. The second half of the journey is softer. Let yourself arrive. And imagine every thought you've had today is being reviewed right now. Below the level of your awareness, your brain is already sorting, softening, and filing. You don't need to revisit anything tonight. The processing is happening without you. It has always happened without you. Beneath every feeling you have ever had, there is a system that knows what to do with it. Let that system work in silence now. You are already in the care of something larger than tonight. And we continue the journey. Highly sensitive people often report a phenomenon that researchers have begun to formally examine: a quality of being deeply moved by ordinary things, not just art or music, but a particular quality of light in the late afternoon, the weight of silence after rain, the kindness in an unexpected exchange with a stranger. These moments register at full amplitude in the HSP nervous system, producing genuine emotional responses to what others might experience as background. This is not sentimentality. It is perceptual accuracy. The world is full of these moments. The highly sensitive person simply has the equipment to receive them. Research has found that highly sensitive people are more likely to notice and respond to the emotional needs of others before those needs are explicitly expressed. This is sometimes experienced as a burden, always aware, always feeling the weight of others' unspoken states. But it is also one of the most profound relational gifts a person can carry. The friend who calls before you knew you needed it. The colleague who noticed. The partner who understood without being told. Very often, these are highly sensitive people, operating from a neural system that was built to register the invisible edges of another person's experience. Sensitivity, in relationship, is a form of love made biological. The highly sensitive nervous system benefits particularly from what sleep researchers call consistent sleep timing. Going to sleep and waking at approximately the same time each day. The circadian rhythm, the body's internal clock, is more sensitive to disruption in HSPs and more quickly restored by consistency. Even a single night of significantly altered sleep timing can produce what researchers call social jet lag, a desynchronization between internal clock and external schedule that takes several days to resolve. For the sensitive person, regularity is not rigidity. It is the scaffolding that allows a finely tuned system to function at its best. Many highly sensitive people describe finding comfort in repetition, in familiar music, familiar route, familiar words. This is not a limitation of imagination. It is the intelligent behavior of a system that has learned to use familiarity as a regulatory tool when the nervous system already knows what to expect. It does not have to allocate processing resources to evaluation and monitoring. The familiar is safe in a very particular neural sense. It allows the system to relax its vigilance. This is one reason why sleep playlists, consistent bedtime routines, and even videos like this one, heard again and again, can become increasingly effective over time. Familiarity teaches the nervous system that it is safe to let go. Highly sensitive people tend to process moral questions and ethical dilemmas more thoroughly and feel them more acutely than average. Research examining moral sensitivity, the ability to recognize ethical dimensions in situations, has found that HSPs consistently score higher on this dimension than less sensitive individuals. They are more troubled by injustice, more moved by suffering, and more likely to experience what psychologists call moral injury, the distress that arises when one's values and one's circumstances come into conflict. This moral attunement is not comfortable to carry, but it is one of the ways that sensitive people have always served as a conscience for the groups and communities around them. The ones who feel it most are often the ones who change it most. The breath is a particularly direct pathway to the highly sensitive nervous system. Research on slow, deep breathing, specifically breathing at a rate of approximately 5 to 6 breaths per minute, has found that this pattern activates the vagus nerve and shifts the autonomic nervous system from sympathetic activation toward parasympathetic rest. This effect is stronger in individuals with high baseline arousal, which frequently includes highly sensitive people. The breath, for the HSP, is not just a relaxation technique. It is a direct communication between the voluntary and involuntary systems, a message from the conscious mind to the body that says, "We are safe. We can rest." The body, in HSPs, listens particularly well. Touch has a particularly powerful effect on the highly sensitive nervous system. Studies examining the neurological effects of gentle, slow touch, the kind produced by a weighted blanket, a warm bath, or a gentle hand on the arm have found that this type of stimulation activates the C-tactile fibers, a specific class of nerve fibers that respond to slow, gentle touch and send signals directly to the brain's emotional and social processing centers. For highly sensitive people, this kind of touch is not merely pleasant. It is genuinely regulating. It reduces cortisol, lowers heart rate, and shifts the nervous system toward rest. Gentleness, applied to the skin, becomes a language the sensitive body understands completely. Highly sensitive people are more likely to experience what psychologists call anticipatory anxiety, worry about future events before they occur. This is a predictable extension of the deeper processing characteristic. A system that thinks ahead more thoroughly also rehearses more possible futures, including negative ones. But research on this pattern in HSPs has also found something encouraging. The same capacity for anticipation that produces worry can, when consciously directed, produce equally detailed positive anticipation, savoring a future good experience with the same thoroughness that anxiety rehearses future threats. The system does not care about the direction. It will work with whatever material you give it. Tonight, you are giving it quiet. The highly sensitive person's relationship with art is one of the most distinctive and well-documented aspects of the trait. Research has found that HSPs are more likely to make art, to seek it out, to feel transformed by it, and to describe it as necessary rather than optional in their lives. This is consistent with the neural picture, a processing system that registers aesthetic experience more fully, that is moved by beauty at a physiological level, that finds in art a kind of recognition of its own inner depth. Art, for the HSP, is often the mirror in which their interior experience finally finds its reflection. The painting that made you catch your breath, the song that said what you could not say, these were accurate. Solitude, for highly sensitive people, is not the same as loneliness. Research distinguishing between these two experiences has found that HSPs are significantly more likely to describe solitude as restorative, chosen, and meaningful, rather than as a state of deprivation or social failure. The ability to be comfortably alone, to be one's own good company, to find the interior world genuinely interesting, is a protective factor for well-being in HSPs. It is also one of the things that makes rest easier. The sensitive person who knows how to be alone knows how to be with themselves. And that particular skill is one of the most important pathways to sleep there is. The prefrontal cortex, the brain's center of complex decision-making, planning, and executive function, shows more sustained activity in highly sensitive people during tasks that require careful evaluation. This neural pattern is associated with the thoroughness of processing characteristic of the trait, but it also has implications for sleep. The prefrontal cortex is among the last brain regions to quiet down during sleep onset, and in highly sensitive individuals, its evening activity may persist longer. This is one reason why cognitive quieting practices, gentle, absorbing, non-demanding activities before sleep, are particularly effective for HSPs. The prefrontal cortex, given something soft to rest in, releases its hold more easily than when asked to simply stop. Light exposure has a stronger regulatory effect on the circadian rhythm of highly sensitive people than on the general population. According to preliminary research on photosensitivity and sleep timing, the highly sensitive person's visual system processes light information with the same thoroughness applied to other sensory input, which means that exposure to bright, blue spectrum light in the evening more substantially delays melatonin onset, and exposure to dim, warm light more substantially promotes it. Dimming the lights in the evening is good advice for everyone. For the highly sensitive person, it may be quietly transformative. The nervous system is already listening to the environment. Giving it evening light that says night is beginning is simply telling the truth. Highly sensitive people show a particular sensitivity to the emotional content of the media they consume. Research on media and emotional reactivity has found that HSPs are more affected by distressing news, violent or emotionally charged narratives, and negative social media content than the general population, and that these effects persist for longer. Evening exposure to distressing media is particularly disruptive to HSP sleep, because the processing system continues working on the content long after the screen has gone dark. This is not a personal failing. It is a perfectly logical consequence of a processing system doing its job in a media environment that was not designed with it in mind. The capacity for what researchers call deep listening, full, embodied attention to another person's experience, is one of the most consistent findings associated with high sensitivity. HSPs are more likely to notice not just the words someone says, but the emotion behind them, the things they are not quite saying, the subtle shifts in expression and posture. This makes highly sensitive people profoundly good listeners and profoundly important presences in the lives of people who are struggling. It also makes listening tiring, in the way that any exertion tires. The HSP, who ends a day of listening to others' stories, often needs to be listened to, or, in the absence of that, to rest in a space where nothing is asked of them. Like this one, we now understand that high sensitivity is not a single mechanism but a constellation, a cluster of related neural, emotional, and cognitive features that tend to occur together because they emerge from a common underlying architecture. That architecture, a nervous system calibrated toward depth, detail, and responsiveness, produces sensitivity in the emotional domain, the sensory domain, the aesthetic domain, the moral domain, and the interpersonal domain all at once. These are not separate traits that happen to co-occur. They are different expressions of a single underlying design, and that design, studied carefully, is not a design that went wrong. It is a design that went deep. Many highly sensitive people report that sleep feels like a particularly vulnerable act, that the transition from wakefulness to sleep requires a level of trust in the environment that their nervous system is careful to withhold until conditions feel genuinely safe. This is not irrational. It is the behavior of a system that has learned, through experience, that letting one's guard down has costs. Creating conditions of genuine safety, environmental, relational, psychological, is therefore not a luxury for the highly sensitive sleeper. It is a prerequisite. the body will not fully rest in a space it does not trust. When it does trust, when the conditions are genuinely quiet and safe and warm, it rests with a depth that surprises even the person doing the resting. The experience of color appears to be richer and more emotionally resonant for highly sensitive people. Studies examining color perception and emotional response have found that HSPs report stronger responses to color in terms of both preference and mood effects. Varm, low saturation colors, soft umber, muted gold, warm rose tend to produce calming effects in all individuals, but the effect appears larger in those with higher sensitivity. This is consistent with the general pattern. The HSP system is simply more responsive to environmental input in all of its forms, including the visual. The choice of a warm lamp over a bright overhead light in the evening is not just aesthetic. For the sensitive nervous system, it is therapeutic. Research on the long-term well-being of highly sensitive adults has found that the single factor most consistently associated with thriving, more than income, more than social network size, more than external achievement, is finding work, a daily life structure, and relationships that fit the nature of the HSP nervous system. Highly sensitive adults who feel that their life is organized around what they are, rather than against it, report significantly higher levels of meaning, satisfaction, and peace. This finding is both demanding and hopeful. Demanding, because it suggests that fitting the environment matters more than simply adapting to it. Hopeful, because it suggests that the right life for a sensitive person is not a compromise. It is genuinely, deeply possible. The highly sensitive person's experience of time often differs from average. Many HSPs report that time feels more textured, that moments vary greatly in subjective duration, depending on their emotional and sensory content, that rich experiences feel longer and emptier ones shorter, and that the experience of deep absorption can make hours pass in what feels like minutes. This is consistent with what psychologists know about the relationship between attention, emotion, and subjective time. Experiences that engage the processing system fully, with depth, with meaning, with sensory richness, tend to be experienced as temporally expanded. Time, for the highly sensitive person, is not a constant stream. It is a landscape with valleys and peaks. Research examining what researchers call the vantage sensitivity model, the idea that HSPs benefit more than others from positive experiences, has produced some of its most compelling findings in the domain of psychological interventions. Multiple studies have found that when highly sensitive people engage with well-designed therapeutic, mindfulness, or psychoeducational programs, they show greater improvements than less sensitive participants in the same programs. The dose of care that helps a less sensitive person recover from distress may simply restore the HSP to baseline, but a well-calibrated intervention may carry them further than baseline into genuine flourishing. You are, in this moment, giving yourself an intervention, and it is working. Many HSPs report that they feel most like themselves, most at ease, most whole, most capable, in certain specific conditions, in nature in quiet, in deep one-on-one conversation, in creative work, in flow states that absorb attention without overloading it. These conditions are not preferences in a casual sense. They are environments in which the HSP nervous system operates within its optimal range, engaged but not overwhelmed, alive but not overloaded. Knowing this about oneself is not indulgent self-knowledge. It is practical navigation. It allows the highly sensitive person to design a life that works with the grain of their nervous system rather than against it. Night after night, the immune system of highly sensitive people shows a nuanced pattern that researchers are still mapping. High sensitivity appears to correlate with both greater inflammatory reactivity to stressors and greater immunological responsiveness to positive health behaviors. Rest, nutrition, social connection, and reduced stimulation. This means that the highly sensitive person's immune system, like the rest of their biology, is more responsive in both directions. Chronic stress harms it more, but consistent care benefits it more. Sleep is one of the most powerful immune-regulating behaviors there is, and for the HSP, its effects may be particularly pronounced. What you are doing tonight is not simply rest. It is, in the most literal sense, care, the phenomenon that researchers call emotional contagion, the tendency to automatically mirror and adopt the emotional states of those around us, is significantly stronger in highly sensitive people. In social environments, HSPs absorb the emotional atmospheres of rooms and groups in ways that are both automatic and thorough. This makes them unusually good at reading and responding to group dynamics, and unusually likely to end the day carrying emotions that were not originally theirs. One of the most useful practices for HSPs in the hours before sleep is a gentle, conscious process of releasing emotional material that arrived from outside, noticing what belongs to others, and returning it gently to where it came from. The tendency toward depth does not exhaust itself at any age. Research on high sensitivity across the lifespan has found that the trait remains stable in its core features. The depth of processing, the emotional reactivity, the aesthetic sensitivity. Across decades, what does change, and often for the better, is the relationship the highly sensitive person has with their own trait. Older HSPs are more likely to describe their sensitivity as a resource, to have developed effective strategies for managing its costs, and to feel grateful rather than burdened by the depth of their experience. The arc of the highly sensitive life, when supported and understood, tends toward increasing peace with what one is. And now the intellectual answer is clear. High sensitivity is a biological trait, héritable, stable, globally distributed, and ancient. It is characterized by depth of processing, emotional reactivity, aesthetic sensitivity, and responsiveness to environment. It produces both greater vulnerability and greater capacity for flourishing depending on circumstances. It is not a disorder. It is a design, and the most important thing you can do with that design tonight is honor what it needs most: quiet, safety, and the permission to stop. Sleep does not come when you reach for it. It comes when you stop reaching. And this moment, right now, is precisely that moment. Your processing has done what it can today. Your feelings have been felt. Your thoughts have been thought. There is nothing left that needs your attention tonight. Just the slow, ordinary miracle of breathing. In, out, slower now. You don't need to hold on to any of this. We are almost there. You feel things before others name them. That is not a problem. That is a kind of knowing that lives below language. It has always been yours. And tonight, it can simply rest, unheld and unexamined, like a hand finally opened. The startle fades now. The sounds of the house settle into their natural rhythms. Your nervous system, given this quiet, begins to slow the way. Water slows when the current beneath it has nothing more to carry. 1 in 5 people share this. In every gathering, every street, every sleeping city tonight. There are others who feel the world the way you do. You are not alone in your sensitivity. You have never been alone in it. The brain does its quietest and most important work during sleep. Not dramatic work, patient work, sorting, softening, integrating. The sensitive brain at rest is not idle. It is tending to everything that the day brought. One thread at a time. Beauty found you today, even if you didn't notice. A small thing, a color, a sound, a moment that registered at the edge of awareness. Your nervous system collected it. It is there, softly, in the archive. The need for solitude is a need like any other. It asks to be met without apology. Tonight it is fully met. The room is yours. The quiet is yours. There is no one left to take in. You are allowed to be affected by the world, by other people, by the day. Being affected is not weakness. It is accuracy. It means you received what was real, and now you can set it down. Somewhere, a forest is standing in the dark, and no one is watching it. The roots are exchanging nutrients in silence. This has been happening for longer than memory. The world does not need your attention tonight. It is fine. Rest is not a reward for finishing. It is part of the process. The sensitive nervous system does not complete its work and then rest. It rests in order to complete its work. Tonight is not earned. It is given. The air in the room is the same air that has circled this planet for millions of years. You are breathing something ancient. And in this breath, as in every other, you are part of something that continues without effort, without force. Simply by continuing, your body knows the temperature of sleep. Your muscles know how to release. Your eyelids know. The knowledge is older than language. You do not have to teach yourself anything tonight. You only have to allow the things you noticed today that others did not notice. They mattered. The moment of beauty, the flicker of pain in someone's voice, the quality of silence after something important was said. You were right to notice. You were always right. Deep sleep restores what the day used. Every hour of genuine rest returns something that your particular nervous system spent in its work of feeling, processing, and caring. Tonight you are refilling something real. You have spent your life learning to manage what you feel. Tonight, You do not need to manage anything. The feelings can slow with your breathing. There is no task here, only the gradual returning of your nervous system to its most natural state. So the answer to the question your life has been asking, am I too much? Am I broken? Is something wrong with me? Is no. The science says no. The biology says no. The 1 in 5 says no. You are not too much. You are exactly enough. You are differently calibrated. And the same depth that has made life harder is the very thing that makes rest deeper. When finally given the conditions it needs, the weight of the blanket is its own form of care. The warmth of the bed, the dark of the room, your body is reading these as signals. All clear, all well. You can rest now, and it believes them. Dreams, when they come, will carry what remains. The processing system will continue its work in images and stories below the surface of awareness. You do not need to direct it. It knows its way. Every difficult day you have moved through as a sensitive person has been moved through with more than ordinary effort. The ordinary tasks that cost others a little cost you more. You have done more than you have been given credit for. That is true, and it can rest here, now, without needing to be acknowledged by anyone but you. Somewhere tonight, another highly sensitive person is lying in the dark, moving towards sleep the way you are, feeling the same quieting, breathing the same rhythm. You are not doing this alone, even in the solitude of your room. The last fact is the simplest one. Sensitivity, carried honestly and kindly, toward yourself as much as toward others, becomes something worth carrying, not despite the difficulty, because of the depth. Tonight, you rest in that depth, and it holds you completely. And so, our quiet journey through the science of sensitive people comes to its natural close. We began with the question of what it actually means to carry a nervous system built for depth in a world that moves too fast. And we discovered, fact by fact, that the answer is not what most sensitive people have been told. We learned that 1 in 5 people carry this trait, and that it appears in over 100 species, preserved across millions of years because it serves a genuine function. We learned that the same system that makes a crowded room exhausting makes a piece of music move you before you understand why. We learned that depth is not a flaw. It is a design, and we arrived, finally, at the question worth sleeping on tonight. If sensitivity is not something to be fixed, then what becomes possible when you finally stop apologizing for it? The same forces that make you more easily overwhelmed make you more easily moved by beauty. The same nervous system that makes a crowded room exhausting makes a piece of music feel like it was written for you alone. High sensitivity reminds us that depth is not a burden to be managed. It is a capacity to be honored. Most of all, by the one who carries it. By pausing to notice that we glimpse something the research confirms and the heart already knows. You are always enough, exactly as you are. In these final minutes, take the deepest breath you can, as deep as possible. The nervous system that processes deeply is also the one that rests most completely when it finally lets go. The paradox dissolves here. In this breath, there is no conflict between sensitivity and rest. There never was. You are not too much for sleep. You are perfectly built for it. Let your entire being dissolve into the quiet that your particular kind of mind has been searching for all day. The stillness so complete that nothing moves against it. Where the room holds you like a hand, cupping something fragile and precious. Prepare for deep sleep. No boundaries left, only peace. If tonight helped the sensitive part of you feel understood, if these facts about a nervous system like yours brought even a small measure of peace, perhaps pass this quietly to another HSP in your life, someone who also feels too much and rests too little. It might be exactly what they needed to hear. Whatever you've been turning over today, those half-formed thoughts, those moments you keep returning to, you don't need to carry them into sleep. They will still be there in the morning. Tonight, you belong only to yourself. You've traveled inward tonight. Through corridors most people never pause to notice. You touched the architecture of who you are and found it more patient, more forgiving, more deeply designed than it perhaps felt this morning. You can allow these thoughts of sensitivity and depth to fade now, like the last detail of a dream at dawn, present, then softer, then simply part of everything, leaving only the unheld, quiet calm behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body feel heavier, as if all you've been carrying today is being sorted by careful, invisible hands, and is simply setting itself down. If sleep comes, let it carry you the way. Deep knowing does, not with force, but with a quiet certainty that has always been there, into a realm where time and weight no longer matter. If your eyes are still open, the next video is waiting for you, ready to continue the journey. But if they're closed, stay there. Stay in the darkness that feels safe and warm. Tomorrow, your sensitivity will still be there, still tending, still noticing, still feeling the world at full depth, still becoming. But tonight belongs to stillness. Rest well, gentle explorer, and remember, the nervous system that feels the most is also the one most perfectly built for this. Good night.